How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today I'm super excited because we're going to be talking about the very first episode of The Outer Limits. And since I've never covered this show before on this channel, a super quick introduction. The Outer Limits was a classic black and white anthology science fiction TV show. So anthology, every single episode would tell its own story. It ran for 2 seasons in the 1960s, and I feel there's a story that a lot of people have with The Outer Limits, which is sitting down to watch TV, doing a little bit of channel surfing, and stumbling across what you think is an episode of The Twilight Zone that you've never seen before, only to get back from a commercial break and have the bumper tell you you've actually been watching The Outer Limits the whole time. The Outer Limits is a bit of an underrated TV show, and I do wish more people would talk about it. Now, all that being said, if you remember The Outer Limits being in color, that's because Outer Limits would have a super successful revival series later on, and I do hope to get to that after I cover all these. And speaking of covering these, basically, I've seen a handful of episodes of both series, and what I have seen of Outer Limits so far, I have really liked. But I've never actually sat down and done a proper watch through of this series, so that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to start on episode 1, and week by week work through the whole thing, and make this sort of vlog about it. So yeah, a lot of these will be first impression reviews. But all that being said, The Outer Limits, what I have seen of it, I've really liked, and I can't wait to explore and see what else this series has to offer. So let's dive in to episode 1. Episode 1 is entitled The Galaxy Being, and if we crack open our handy-dandy DVD guidebook, it says this episode originally aired September 16th, 1963, was written and directed by Leslie Stevens, and stars Lee Phillips, Jacqueline Scott, and features a special guest appearance from Cliff Robertson. Now, this is a really fun way to open up the series. We have this radio tower and a bunch of talk about microwaves and radio waves, and receiving transmissions from space, and the whole idea of, I think I heard something out there, let me try to tune in, let me try to pick something up. We get super cool retro technology, which granted at the time was just new technology, but still a really cool setup here, and I love the idea of hunkering down and trying to hear the aliens. Classic sci-fi, classic is there something out there. But eventually, he does make contact. The alien himself is a super cool special effect, and when he talks to it, it is a really good conversation. 2 people of different worlds and viewpoints meeting for the very first time. Now, things do heat up towards the end. We get a big explosive third act to this episode, and it overall comes out really fun. It does what a lot of good classic sci-fi does. Have an interesting setup, a good thought-provoking message, but then also a good bit of fun behind it. Overall, the pilot episode to The Outer Limits feels like a classic science fiction movie compressed into a smaller television time block. I really liked it, it's a great introduction to this series, and a good piece of science fiction overall. But that being said, what exactly is the episode about? I do want to jump in, take a little bit of a deeper dive, and analyze a few plot points. Now don't worry, I'm going to be focusing primarily on the setup, and I'll try not to ruin the end, so no major spoilers, but let's take a bit of a deeper dive. We open up at this radio station. It's in the middle of nowhere, we got the main building, a giant antenna, and then this little shed out back. And the guy who owns it works there with his wife, and his brother is the radio DJ. And we'll meet the DJ first as he's hosting the show and putting on a record, but after the mic cuts off, he tells his brother's wife, hey, there's something wrong with the power, we're not getting near as much as we should. We promised our advertisers we'd have a range of 200 miles, And if they find out we haven't been reaching as many customers as we should, they could get really mad and ask for their money back. The wife says the station has been falling on a bit of hard times, and the guy's been salvaging parts and reducing the power, and at first she believes this is all just to save money, but no, quite far from that. She gets called into the shed where the guy's doing his work. Turns out all the extra pieces were used to build this elaborate machine, and he's not turning down the power, he's rerouting it to his lab. The guy points to this glass fish tank looking thing, and it turns out he's getting a signal from space and routing it to this 3D TV that he's built. And I really do love this oddly specific sci-fi trope of building something super cool like a 3D TV, but then not caring about it because you're distracted by something bigger. Again, a signal from space is bigger and more noteworthy, but dude, you have a 3D TV, you can get millions from that. Whatever. He has a good conversation with his wife, where his wife is like, you need to accept your regular duties. You're letting the station and your family fail because you're obsessed with this. And he says, look, I feel a bit like a nobody, but I might be on the verge of making a giant discovery. There's been lots of people throughout history that came from nothing and rose to historical importance. There's people out there doing big important work in these laboratories, but I can run, I can be free-spirited, and I can maybe find out something super important, and that might be what this signal is. So a really good character setup for him. Well, after his wife leaves, he does of course actually make contact, and we get to see an alien on the 3D TV. We actually get the Outer Limits wavelengths from the intro comped into the 3D TV, and then it changes to him, and he has this really cool effect where I think he's in a wetsuit covered in oil, and they did something to the exposure to give him this weird shiny look. He's a really cool design. And if you're gonna start off a new TV series, give us a cool creature to draw people in the doors, right? Well, the two start to talk to each other, and it is a really fun conversation. These two not really knowing how each other works. Oh, you're made up of carbon? You need to eat? What's eating like? Why do you have holes on your face, and why does one of them move when you talk? There's biological stuff like that, but we also dip into philosophy. Hey, alien, do you know what death is? Or how about, do you know what God is? And the answer to that one, I felt was a really interesting answer, which I won't spoil for you here. I will say with this conversation, there is a bit of, I don't know what you're talking about because I have nothing comparable to this, which is interesting because, yeah, an alien would think that, but then he just uses a few synonyms and the alien's like, oh yeah, totally, I get you. Now granted, we can't let the episode drag, we're on TV, we have to stay moving, but yeah, it is a little bit easier to talk to this guy than you might think, especially even just rigging up the computer to do an intergalactic Zoom call and quite quickly translating pulses of binary light into a speech program. Never mind, we can do that in a couple minutes, right? Again, whatever, we can't let the episode drag. Well, even though he's in the middle of literally first contact, his wife is going to come in and he can't quite break the news to her yet, and the wife says, you're being honored in town. You're receiving an achievement award for the station. The mayor's going to be there, 50 people are gonna be there. It's a party, and if you don't show up to it, I'm gonna get really mad. And what if I drug the entire party here, kicked open your door, and let them see what's so important that you had to miss your own party? Well, we can't let that happen. So, best to leave the alien on hold for a couple hours. And yeah, when they leave him on hold, he literally is just still standing there in his little fish tank, which I think is pretty funny. But whatever, we obviously have a setup for trouble here. As the brother, the main DJ, is going to the awards ceremony as well, they leave a substitute in his place and they say, hey, don't touch that dial. I know the power's a little bit low. Leave everything as it is and don't mess with anything. Well, I'm sure absolutely nothing's going to go wrong while he leaves the station unattended. Let's get down to that awards ceremony. Needless to say, the final act does heat up, and we do get some really fun, kind of sci-fi action moments. We get the big effect doing more work, and we even get a bunch of military guys showing up, and we get some cool stuff happening towards the climax. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about this section, but it really does feel like a nice old school sci-fi movie, somehow done on a TV budget. Seeing it on TV back in the day was probably super impressive, and probably got a lot of people to talk about this fun new series. As I said at the top, I really liked it. The effect, the fun ending, all that stuff's really cool, but I also like the retro sci-fi, and I really did like what turns into the heart of this episode, that initial first contact conversation. Overall, this is pretty cool, and it's just the first one. There's 32 total episodes this season, so we got 32 more to check out, and I can't wait to see what other fun, wacky adventures await us. And I'm super excited to start doing this series of reviews. But yeah, Outer Limits 1 gets a thumbs up from me. Super happy to do this. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode down in the comments below, and what are your favorite episodes of The Outer Limits? What episodes should I be looking forward to? And do you like the revival? I know it really does have a cult following. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. If you guys want to see more videos kind of like this, feel free to click right here and see more. Anyway, I'll see you guys again very soon. Playlist here. Have a good day now.